Let me
Easy.
start. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Music Industry Insights Worldwide, Volume 3. And today I have the wonderful Mirca with us. Hello, how are you?
Hello, Saskia. Thank you for inviting me. I'm great. I hope you too.
Oh, I'm really good. Thank you for asking. And I really appreciate your time today. And thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing your views and opinions, and to helping make the music industry a more diverse and inclusive place to be. We met on the Key Change program. So do you want to tell the viewers a little bit about where you're from, what you do, and yeah, a little bit about you?
Yeah. So I'm based in Germany. I'm going back and forth between Berlin and Munich. I do many different things. I started out with events, festival creation, production. I also had a tour booking agency at one point. Then I realized making 15% of very little money is like no money, and decided, okay, might need to change that up a bit. And yeah, I started with promoting festivals and events, also focusing on gender equality. We did a big event in 2017, and that's also when I joined the Key Change, the first cohort. And from there on, basically, it kind of diversified into not just being focused on gender equality, but on diversity in all
Yeah.
the different areas, and to look into intersectional approaches to this. And we founded an agency that actually is now mostly focused on safer space policies, but also on like education, on workshops, events, but also sometimes on artistic approaches to like getting people to think about discrimination, marginalization, and diversity. So
Wow,
yeah.
that's amazing. So how long have you been doing all of this for? Like, what's your journey been like since you started your career up until now? How long has it taken you, and what kind of journey have you had to take?
Oh, that's a hard question. I think there was many stops along the way. I was on track to become a, I was on track for my PhD in sociology,
Mm.
um, which I really loved. But I didn't like the way that everyone was like working against each other more or less at the university, and there were so little jobs, and it was very competitive, but not like, there's friendly competitiveness, and then
Yeah.
there's academic competitiveness, and I just didn't see myself wanting to be in that system. And so at the same time I was already doing events and other things, so it basically kind of like that was like one of the big cuts I did. But and at first, you think, oh, I spent so much time and all that topics and learning. But I mean, I also never regretted it because I love sociology and reading and science.
Yeah.
Um, and then like all the way down, of course, now I can all use my knowledge on that for the agency and the work I do there.
Yeah.
Um, I think it was always like, you always have to adjust and see where you want to go. How do you get there? How do you build a network?
Super
Also
important.
self-worth. Sorry, what?
Yeah, that's super important, isn't it? It's about understanding who you are, where you fit in the industry, and what kind of what value you bring to the industry as well. I think that's really important.
I think I came down like it doesn't really matter what you do, but it's all about the storytelling more or less. I mean, that's the other side of it. Knowing from the inside is the one, and then to make others believe in it. It doesn't matter if you want to cooperate with someone, if you want to go for funding, if you want to catch a label or management. It's all about storytelling and seeing where the story is going and putting
Yes.
it in a way that the other side wants to be part of the journey. I think that's the biggest thing that you can learn, because that makes your life so much easier, because you can be a really great artist or you can be a really great workshop speaker, whatever, but if you don't convey it in the way that the other side will know that that's who you are, like it's only half of it, like you need to be able to represent it and to
And to
paint a
relate,
picture of it.
yeah, and to relate to other people in their own personal lives and their own
Yeah.
experiences, isn't it? So it's about people understanding you and getting that passion and that kind of emotion from you that they can relate to. Yeah,
Well,
definitely.
yeah, and also what you can bring for them, like it's I think that's what most people, they underestimate how much it is not just about you when you start any kind of collaboration, but it's a two-way street. And
Yeah,
then lot of times when people start out, they start networking, but they only think about what they have that, for example, the festival booker should know or want, or the
yeah,
label or whatever. But it's a two-way street, because it's always about both sides. And once you start to realize that, it's a different way to approach someone, and it's
definitely.
more friendly. you know, like it's not just about what you can do for me, but also what can I do for you.
Yes, it's like a partnership, isn't it? It's about
Yeah,
working together with others and kind of sharing the same values and goals. Yeah, I think
yeah,
that's really important. Yeah, thank you for sharing that with us. I think you've shared some amazing real gems there that people can learn from and understand what you need today in today's industry, because it's always evolving, isn't it? It's always changing, and it's about keeping up with what's going on and what kind of things you need to be a successful artist in the industry, not just an artist, a music professional as well. So yeah,
yeah.
I think it's really important. And what kind of like musical education have you had? Have you had any musical kind of education or upbringing, or just been social?
No, no, at all. No, nothing that was like, I mean, I learned some instruments, you know, myself at some point or other, had a band at some point or other. Um, but nothing like professionally, like I didn't go to universities or schools about music education or did any classes on that. And to be honest, I'm not sure how much most of them bring. I'm sure there might be some around that are like valuable, but most of the university classes I think is like very superficial and they don't really teach you what you need to know about how to do it. You just need to do it in a way. That's why I think, you know, when you go and want to join any kind of music industry job, it's really good to just do some stuff on your own, you know, like set up your own concert or your own festival or whatever, just trying things and learning to that for
Yeah,
me is most valuable, I think.
definitely. And you always learn as well. Like everything's not going to be successful. There are going to be failures along the way, but it's about learning from those as well, isn't it? It's about learning and kind of driving your way through this industry that you might think, yeah, and like, so I've had an education from GCSE all the way up to now I'm starting my PhD, and that's always been in music. But a lot of people I look around and I'm like, but they don't have a musical education or they don't understand the industry. It doesn't really matter. And I think that's a great point you make. It's about getting stuck in and finding your passion and your love and then just going with the flow kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and learning how everything works, you know, and you will only learn so much from education from the outside, from universities. I mean, I think there's value to all of that, and I mean, if you enjoy learning, you know, you should learn. But the hands-on stuff is that where you really need to actually succeed in the end. You need to be able to have both the, you know, theoretical knowledge and then the hands-on knowledge. And yeah,
Definitely.
I think the mistakes, I mean, you can see it as mistakes, but it's actually just like learning to walk, you know, like it's not a mistake or
Yeah.
failure when you when
Yeah.
a child learns to walk and it falls down and it gets up again. That's not a failure. That's a grown-up way of thinking, you
Yeah,
know?
the learning curve, isn't it? It's all about learning and
Yeah,
getting up and trying again. I think that's a great
exactly.
strategy, actually, is looking at a child walking and yeah, they are going to fall down and they are going to have knocks and bumps, but they always
Yeah.
get up and they keep trying, right? And I think that's a great thing, like to use as a little example of the way we have to kind of progress in the industry as well, because sometimes we all fall down and we all make mistakes, but it doesn't mean we're bad or we're wrong. It just means we're learning from those, right?
In the best of cases, yes. I mean, we're not, no one's perfect. And then it's always a point of view, you know, what I think is perfect. And another person will go around and say, I don't like the way you're doing things, or I found this hurtful, or I find this wrong, or
Yeah.
there's another better way to do it, even. Like all of these are valid. And it's always seeing where do I stand, where do I want to go, and how does that work with the knowledge and the tools I have.
Yes. And I think that's a great thing about you as well. Like we met on the Key Change program, and I really love the work you do around equality, diversity, inclusion, and you also are non-binary yourself. So that also comes with its own challenges, right? So
Yeah.
not just also non-binary, but you also have other disabilities to go with that. Do you want to tell the viewers a little bit about the challenges and the barriers that you faced accessing and working in the music and entertainment industry and your
I
background?
mean, yeah. Mhm. Well, I think each of them, like on its own, is like, you know, there's always challenges if you're neurodivergent, if you're not quite like everyone else is,
Yeah, yeah,
or if you like non-binary, so, you know, like the first thing that people like to do is misgender you. So you
yeah,
come into a room and someone says, "Hey, missus," or "Hey, lady," or "Hey, girl," and it's already like my mood is already halfway down there. And then like, you know, something else happens and I can't, you know, it's too loud from the outside. Everyone else can just deal with all the noise around them, and I can't. My brain does not work that way.
yeah,
And it's like, oh wow, I just want to cry and run out of this room, more or less. You know, sometimes those are the days. It's challenging sometimes to see like because everyone else you know, a lot of them don't have either
They-
the combination or any, like, you know, disadvantages in that way. There's a very few diversity in the music industry in many of those rooms. So
yeah.
sometimes it feels like they don't really understand it, but they also make you feel bad about it in a way, you know, because you're the one always asking for something
Yeah, I
where,
feel like that too. I
yeah.
feel like a lot of the time, like I always feel like I'm trying to, it's like I find the music industry is a lot of taking, but not a lot of giving. Do you find the
Mm.
same?
I'm not sure if it's taking, it's less, it's more like brushing over, like not
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
looking or taking the time. Like I think a lot of the time, it just, you know, everyone talks about diversity, but diversity means you have to take more time for everything because you have to look in how are everyone's needs, how's
Yeah.
everyone feeling, where are barriers for whom, and how do we make it that everyone has, you know, the same
Starting.
experience of something.
Yeah, and the same starting point as well, because I don't think, if you think of it like a race, I don't think everyone starts on the starting line. I think there's certain people that start way back and other people that start way ahead of others because of the privilege and the advantages that they have. And I know you
Yeah.
also suffer from kind of difficulties with neurodivergence. I know you suffer from stuff with the trans community. And I also know that you're also underrepresented as being a female and or a non-binary person too, you know? So those all add up. And when we're talking about intersectional data and intersectionality, like you said, you talk about, I think that that's another major issue that a lot of people don't really talk about. So they don't talk about class. They don't really talk about all these other intersections that can kind of multiply those barriers and make it a lot harder for people like us to succeed.
Yeah, classism is really a really big issue, and it's really funny because I'm the first in my family to have like a higher education.
Hey, same.
Uh, Yeah, and it really, you know, people don't think about it because everyone's like, yeah, my parents are academics, or at least, you know, they're not academics, they just went to university. You know, that's kind of like what people think is like not being academic is like, yeah, but you know, you're not working class. That's just not the same thing. And it makes a huge difference how you experience the world and how you still feel on the outside even more, even today, you know, like just like I wasn't baptized. I was the only child whose parents were never together. And, you
Same as,
know,
same as mine.
yeah, at a very small village, at a very Catholic in the 80s. And I mean, nowadays it's nothing anymore, I guess, apart from very small villages again.
Yeah,
But then
lots.
it was a really big scandal, you know?
No, I totally feel you, and I understand that as well. And I think that's where we kind of got our connection as well, isn't it? Because I think we've got our own journeys, but there's a lot of stuff that we can kind of relate to. And when I met you, I thought they is so inspirational, so important to this industry because you're doing so many different projects and topics around safety, harassment, bullying, diversity and inclusion. Those are really, really important topics. So how is that kind of evolved over time? Did you always want to do that, or is that something that's just come out of what you saw and what you felt in the industry?
I think it was like, you know, back in the days when I started out with, I was like not even seeing stuff a long time, you know. It took me a while to take off like what do you call it, like what horses have, you know, so you can't see. It's like you need to
The blinkers, yeah. So they're kind
yeah,
of your eyes, so you can't see what's behind you around the side of you, right? I get,
exactly.
yeah.
So you need to learn that. You need to learn how to see what was, you know, sexual misconduct. Where did someone cross my border? Like where has like I didn't know about my ADHD for such a long time, and so like all those things like it gradually came to me, and then you see the world differently all of a sudden, and then you understand stuff all of a sudden, you know,
And
from a
people
different
treat you
perspective.
differently as well, right? And people don't treat you the same if they do know that there's a kind of difference, right? Do you
Yeah.
find like I feel like sometimes because I don't feel like that there's always a problem with me. I feel like sometimes it's a problem with the way other people treat me or see me as a person that causes a lot of the problems. Do you find the same thing?
I think it's always a fit from both sides, and it's again we come back to do people have like do they take the time to have a discussion about why or what was perceived by them, you know, like often it's about the communication, like saying, you know,
It is.
you are a problem, or to me it feels like when you say it like this, it comes makes me feel like this. It's a difference between saying you're a bad person or that thing you said hurt me because it felt like you meant this and that. And that's a very different conversation that
Yes.
you're having.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. So how do you think that's impacted you and your career progressing and getting to where you are today? So thinking of all those things that you've been through and had to navigate your way through just to get to where you are today, how has that impacted you and the way you feel?
I think at one time it's kind of like a superpower. Some of the stuff, like the ADHD, for example, when I'm like super hyper motivated, I go into hyperfixation, and then
Yeah,
I just work for 18 hours, and I can get like tons of stuff done that other people will not get done like
I
months.
do that. I do that. I do that too.
Yeah, that's the thing, like that's the upside. And sometimes, like, the boldness that it comes across, that's basically like being like a white cis male, like a lot of people said it's very dominant, whereas I've always felt like I'm very, very like quiet sometimes even, but from
Quiet.
the outside
I'm
perspective was
quite
completely
quiet.
different.
I think you're
Yep.
quite. I do remember the time you walked into Strasbourg into the room, and I remember you just slammed the thing down and looked, and I just looked, and I don't think you even meant it. I just think that sometimes, because everyone's different, and sometimes people just don't see things in the same way. So it's about having that understanding and that compassion for others, knowing that, we're not all the same here, and we have to respect how other people are because it's not something with the person. Sometimes it's the way they have to deal with what they go through in life, right?
Well, and then sometimes it's a disability that literally limits your way
Yeah,
of acting, like your impulse control and your way of dealing with situations and
yeah,
your emotional control. And often for me, for example, I don't even realize that it comes across this or that, because in me it still feels completely different, and then the outside world says, but you just came across as. And I'm like, oh God, I didn't realize, like, how did it happen? Like,
yeah. But me too.
how am I so disconnected to between the perception and my inside world? So
Mhm.
that's, for me, is like one of the biggest issues that I have, and I don't really know. It's very hard because if you don't see it yourself in yourself,
You can't
you
fix
know,
it, can you? Yeah, I get that. So if you
yeah,
can't see it, you
very
can't fix
hard.
it. Yeah, I understand that. And I think once you get to speak to you and you understand you as a person, you're really not like that at all. You're so kind, caring, considerate, and compassionate for so many different people in so many different backgrounds, which is why I think we had that connection. And we've always had that kind of connection where I really get the work you do and I really get you as a person. I think you're amazing and such an inspiration to so many different people. So please keep up the amazing work you do and don't let anyone stop you.
Thank you. And well, I can give that compliment right back to you. I think,
Oh,
like we both had not the easiest way to
yeah.
where we go. And so in some ways, I think it makes us stronger. You
Yeah.
just have to be careful to not be more brittle in the inside, you know what I
Get
mean? It gets the harder, the more brittle it
Yes, but
can
don't
get.
forget to be kind on yourself because I think the other
Yeah.
thing is sometimes so many people, it can seem like there's a lot of stuff going on all at once, and then you kind of internalize that and think, oh, is it something I've done? When actually, no, it's nothing you've done at all. It's just the way other people see you and react to situations, right?
Well, and then there's also, rejection sensitivity, which is like one of the biggest issues also with ADHD or neurodivergency,
Yeah.
that you just your emotional regulation isn't working, and you always assume that people are like against you or like not liking you or whatever, So there's a lot, again, that's neurochemical, that's not even in your control, and the way that you feel. It could be about the other people, but a lot of that is also in the inside, So there's
Oh,
still a lot of work. And when I see the younger people now, they're like in their 20s, they already got like diagnosis and they get support. And for example, when you get it as a child, you'll actually get real therapy, but all the therapies are like all focused on small children, like
yeah.
almost all of them. None of that
Yeah.
is like helping grown-ups. Like, you're not different.
I get you. I totally feel you. I've been to therapy and I think therapy is an amazing thing. So if there's any of you out there that are struggling, never feel shy to ask for help and never feel afraid to go and speak to someone about the way you're feeling, right? Because it's really important. And there's no shame in it either, is there?
No, definitely not. No, what I meant is like for ADHD or for autism, those therapies are only basically all focused on children and
Okay.
working with children. The
Right.
general therapies is not so hard, but then you get misdiagnosed with depression or with OCD or with all those other things that you don't
Yes,
actually have
please.
because they're all secondary, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, yeah, I totally feel you on that. And it's really nice to listen to you and learn, because one of my ex-partners had ADHD and I didn't really understand it. And we were in domestic violence and I kept saying to him, look, please, can you not come near me? Can you not contact me? But now you've just explained that. It seems like that if I said that to someone that had ADHD, they would take that as rejection rather than me just speaking to be nice to them and not want to get them, put them in a situation where they might get into trouble. Does that make sense?
I mean, it sounds more complicated on that side, but yeah, definitely. I think that that a lot of stuff that you would say to someone who's neurotypical, it would be like
Yeah.
completely a different meaning.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
and
And
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
learning, I think, all the time. And you know, the more I spend my time around people that have different neurodiversities across the board, like everyone has to be catered for specifically rather than just one size fits all kind of thing, because that doesn't
Oh
work,
yeah.
does it?
No, there's some stuff that you have in common with a lot of people,
Yeah,
for example, but then like others completely the opposite, you know, so you
yeah,
can be hyperactive on the outside or you can be hyperactive on the inside and you
yeah.
won't see it because it's only your thoughts racing in circles. You will still like not be able to sleep because, you know, but you can't see it. And then some people sleep all the time because like all the sensory overloads makes them totally exhausted all the time. But
Yeah,
again, there's other people who do sports 18 hours a day.
yeah. That's so
It's
true.
very wide spectrum, and that's why it's so dangerous to put people into categories. If you know one person who's neurodivergent, you know one person.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so true. And I think it's very complex and it needs to be looked at individually rather than just a one size fits all, like we said already. And not everyone is the same. And we've all got different challenges and barriers, which is why I do this show, right? Is to explain to people the different barriers from, say, different countries, different backgrounds, different classes, different races, because they're
Mhm.
all different, aren't they? Everyone's experience is unique to the person. And that's why I think intersectionality is so important.
That is very true. I
Yeah.
think you know, like also how things are like added up. That's I think, you know, it's not just having different things that are like along like you know next to each other, but like it makes a difference
Yeah,
which of those intersections you know you're on, and that it limits your access and your possibilities and your privilege even more. That's really the most important thing to know, I think.
thank you. I think that's really valuable. And thank you so much for sharing that with us. And how have you found like the funding and kind of the support available to you to progress and succeed and to grow into the amazing person that you are right now? Because you've got so much going on with so much information. I'm super impressed. Um, how did you get there? And was there much help available and funding and support from the industry, or did you do most of that yourself?
Well, I think I took a long time with a lot of turns to know where I was going. And for the longest time, I didn't go and apply for funding. I don't even know why. You know, it was just probably like something like I don't deserve it or I'm not gonna get it anyways. I don't know what it was. So for many years, I just didn't even try. And then I tried, and we got like 20 or 30,000 for our first festival, which was
Yay.
amazing. You know. And basically now I got like a lot of funding for all kinds of like I think I get 80% of my applications go through. That's
Fantastic.
just an estimate, you know, like I have never really looked in how, but it's quite a lot and it's actually really nice. And so, and here's the thing, once you get funding, you will get more funding. Like
Yeah.
once you're in.
Okay,
And
because I
that's
think
the
that's
big.
one of the problems I faced, right? I applied for funding with the Arts Council twice. I've applied for the funding for PRS Council, and I got turned down 3 or 4 times. And then after that, I thought there's no point me applying anymore, Saskia, because you're not going to get anything. So it kind of automatically in my brain now, when people are like, "How are you going to fund this? How are you going?" I just think, well, I'm not going to go for funding because I won't get it. And I think
Oh,
that's
but I think, well, I think maybe you have to have someone look at your application, you know, or maybe did you ask, like, I think the first step is always ask them, like sometimes it's only, there's only so much available funding and
yeah,
then there's no, you know, point. But sometimes they will give you feedback on where you could be improving your application.
right.
And that's something I would really recommend if you've been turned down several times, because you know, if
Yeah.
it's only once or so, it doesn't mean anything. Even if it's 10 times, it doesn't mean anything. There's
It
like so many people applying.
that rejection
Um,
kind of thing, I think it does. I don't know what it is, but I just feel like I'm not quite good enough. I'm not quite there yet. But the thing with me was I was applying for music funding to make music. And because I didn't have any music in place, they wanted music, which was going to cost me money to make. So it was kind of like they wanted something to hear, but I didn't have the money to make something in the first place, which is where I
oh
was
yeah, yeah.
22 kind of thing. So I was just like, where do I go? So that's why I carried on with the educational, right? Because I've always
Mm,
wanted to go down the musical route, but there's always been barriers in front of me, which are financial barriers actually. And just barriers that I couldn't afford to make their music and couldn't afford to pay
mm,
for producers, you know? So I thought, what else could I do that's still relevant, that's still applicable to the industry, that can still make opportunities and support other people and build a name for myself? So that's why I did what I did. I think it was just about finding my path and understanding that sometimes maybe I wasn't ready just then anyway, you know? So in a way, maybe it was a
mhm.
thing.
But yeah, so I think the first thing you need to know, if you're an artist, there's no point in applying to anything if you don't have anything to listen to.
Yeah.
That's really, unfortunately, there should be funding, especially for those people starting out. But
Yeah.
they say basically, you know, there's no way to judge if you actually have any
Right.
ability, which
Right.
I kind of understand as well.
Yeah,
But
which
yeah,
I
it should be
understand as
something.
well. I do understand that, but I found it really hard to prove myself when
Mm,
I didn't have anything to show, but I couldn't afford to show them anything at the same time. Do you know what I mean? It was really,
mm,
but I think I'm doing a good job of building that reputation and that brand and persona of who I am and what I represent. Because funny enough, all the things that I put in that funding form, I've achieved without any funding anyway. So I think that I'm really proud to say that with or without that funding, I still managed to achieve everything I said I would. So I'm really proud of that.
yeah, I think, and you can be, and you know, this is you're building your portfolio.
Yeah,
Um, and that's why I also say like have a website or a PDF where you actually show what you're doing, because you can have done many many great things, but if you know where to show it, that's
yeah,
also like it's not existent. So
exactly.
and then you for yourself, you know, I keep forgetting with so many projects what I've been doing, and sometimes I just make a PDF for a project or application, and I'm like, oh my god, yeah, I've did all that stuff. It's when I look at it in its whole
Same.
picture, you
I'm shocked. I'm shocked at
know?
what
Yeah,
I've achieved over the time. I'm like, wow, I
yeah.
did all that stuff because I'm so focused on what I have to do rather than what I've already achieved that I generally tend to forget that.
Oh, that's because it's object permanence. So yeah, it means when it's not there, it's not in your brain, doesn't connect
Right.
to it. It's only and everything that's now, more or less. That's also the same for people. Like when people are not around, I tend to forget them, you know, like when I'm traveling or working somewhere else or just being in hyper focus, I just tend to forget to call someone or to, you know, do other stuff. And that's also an ADHD thing.
Right.
Again, it's
Learning.
yeah, yeah. It is insane how much of that is. And that's the same thing with your achievements, you know, that's why there's no strong urgency anymore. So basically that's the past. The past is gone. Ah, I don't remember anymore, you know?
Yeah, I totally feel you on that one. So tell me, what are your thoughts and feelings on equality, diversity, inclusion in the music and entertainment industry at this moment in time?
Well, I think we made steps, but I don't see it really progressing as much as it should be progressing. I
Right.
mean, there's a bit more like diversity in the lines of white cis women being more on stage, but also depending on where, or getting more funding, or getting, you know, on different parts of the industry, but only very limited. But for
Yeah,
everyone else, I mean, for people of color, for trans and non-binary people, for disabled people, is like
it's
it,
non-existent.
yeah, no, it is. I mean, disabled people are like the, you know,
Disabled and trans, I always feel are left out.
yeah,
Every time I look at everything, the first things I look at is disabled people and trans people, and they're always forgotten. And non-binary people as well, they're always forgotten in stats, in data, in representation and
yeah.
visibility. So I find it very hard for people like us to have that inspiration and empowerment from somebody because we don't have that somebody to aspire to be like or to want to achieve that same level of success, which it
But
is
then,
right?
It's changing, I think. I mean, the data, yeah, it's terrible, and the way they get the data is also terrible, and definitely needs to be like adjusted. But
Yeah,
then again, I look at the young people who are like 20, and I'm in a queer network with a lot
yeah,
of younger people, and they're like so far ahead of the discussion and where they're at and how they support each other, and
yeah,
um,
yeah.
I think they will create a whole new visibility to the topic, you know, and it will be completely different in 10 years. I
Yeah,
think for them it will be like
I hope so.
way easier.
Yeah, that would be amazing because I think we're all trying to set those, we're trying to lay the path for the next generation of talent to follow, right? And I think that's why we find it really difficult because we are kind of trailblazing here and trying to change the way things are. And that can be difficult. Has that affected your mental health in any way? And if so, how?
Well, in the way that sometimes, you know, like when you get misgendered or treated wrong, then of course it there's moments where like it happens like 3 times in a row on 3 different events, and then you feel like, oh God, I don't know if I want to go there anymore. This
Yeah,
is why a lot of people go back into their communities and they stay there because it's
right.
less painful.
Yeah, I totally feel you on that one. I've even felt like that myself, you know? And what kind of advice would you give to someone that might feel like, do you know what, I'm getting so far, but I want to give up? What would your advice be to that person?
I think to try and advocate for yourself and to find allies at the one point, and then to find other people who are in the same boat and to like support each other. I think those are the two things that
Brilliant.
will make you survive those things. I mean, I think going back into just your community, whatever that may be, you know, like it just doesn't really solve any issues. And I think a lot of people who do that, then they end up being very resentful and unhappy because
Yeah.
it's not what you want to do, it's just what you kind of get forced into doing to survive, but it's just surviving, it's not living.
Survival mode. Yeah, I totally feel you on that as well. And I think we've all had to go through that survival mode just to even to get to where we are today, right? As well, we've had to go through that.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's just about trying to make it, you know, like every time you can make something better for someone else, try and do it. If you see someone needs support, to try and support them and to hope that that will get back to you at some point, you know.
I totally feel you on that. And that's something that I've always loved about you, Mirca, is that you just inspire others and you want to support community and you want to trailblaze and you also want to represent, which is fantastic. So thank you so much. And if there's any way that people can find you or find out the work that you do or the organizations you work for, do you want to share a bit of that with the viewers as well?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we have a website, which is Save the Dance with F, because we wanted to call ourselves Safety Dance, but then we thought they might like sue us. SafeTheDance.de.
Yeah.
So that's the website for the agency, and it also has information on me and my other projects on there. It has some free resources on safer spaces, inclusion and diversity writer, and other interesting things. We're always updating that. It's German and English now. At
Yeah.
least most of it is in English available. Not everything, but quite a
Yeah.
lot. It is work in progress, as always. Not enough time in the day to get everything done. But yeah, we do speak at different events around the year. I'm always happy to come and travel internationally. We do workshops in English, German. So yeah, definitely be back at South by Southwest in March, and some other stuff in Germany until then, and hopefully some holidays in between.
You need a holiday. Don't forget to treat yourself because you do
Yes.
deserve that. You work so hard. One last question before we go is, have you ever suffered discrimination or stigma working in the music industry?
I mean, I think we all have. I mean, a lot of that is like from not knowing and assuming, you know, like from going from, for example, neurotypical standard point of view, that can make you, of course, you know, be perceived completely off. And discrimination, I mean, it's everywhere in our society, so it's also the same in the music industry, because it's just even more about power dynamics and about hierarchies a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So
And
I think,
patriarchy as well.
yeah, oh yeah, definitely,
Yeah.
that you cannot like there's no way to separate these. So
Yeah.
I think it's something that everyone who's not a white cis male has suffered in the industry. And Yeah, I think there's still a lot of work that needs to be done to change this in our whole society, and then of course also in our industry.
Yeah, well, I think we're making steps towards that. And I think that's one of the reasons why we connected, is because actually we share the same values and goals, and we're working towards that same mission of equality, diversity, inclusion, and representation. So I just want to thank you so much for taking the time out today. And if there's any social media posts where people can find you or follow you, do you want to share those as well?
Do you have it's probably easier to put the links on the podcast, or
Okay,
I don't
I'll
know.
put them in the description below afterwards. I'll get those for you in a little picture that I can put in the description below. So if anyone wants to follow you, please check the description below. That'll all be in the information. And I just want to say thank you again for your time today, because you've been absolutely amazing. You're always so inspirational, hardworking, and dedicated. And just keep up the amazing work you do, because you're so
Okay.
such a nice person. And I really respect you so much.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoy it, and I think, yeah, it's great that you've been doing the work that you are doing too. And I hope we can do something together more in the future. And I think we all of us need to like band together and take over this industry, because they really, really need to change it.
Yeah.
It's not happening from the inside else, I think.
Well, we're
So
finding the right people, I think, and that's part of the process, isn't it? It's finding the people that you fit the same for values and goals, and then working together to try and make the place of, to try and make the industry a better place for everyone. And I think that's what
yeah,
we're going to do.
yeah, definitely. I
Oh,
think we will make it happen. I'm sure together
we'll,
we can.
we'll get there, and one day we'll look back and we'll be like, do you know how much work we've done? And we've forgotten about it. So yeah, thank you again, and thank you for your time. And I can't wait to see you again soon.
Yeah, thank you, and have a lovely birthday, and
Oh,
hopefully
thanks.
nice Sunday evening.
Oh, thank you so much. I'll speak to you soon.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.